in your own family may not be what the profession actually dictates. So you also need to know, to understand how your personal experiences and your affective reactions influence your professional judgment and behavior. You should understand that. So in that case, perhaps you have some emotions. At a time when you hear the story of some people, of some service user or clients, when you get those stories, you may want to be emotional as a human being or as a woman. Especially, you women, as mothers, you have certain attachment, you have certain things that give you emotions more than what any man can exhibit. So in this instance, as a professional, you should be able to distinguish between those personal reactions, affective reactions that may influence your professional judgment. So it is expected that social worker understand the profession's history, its mission, roles, and responsibility of the profession. That was why yesterday we took ourselves through some duties, the purpose of social work, and the responsibility of social workers. We should also understand the role of other professions when engaged in interprofessional teams. I said yesterday that in social work, we don't work in silos. Social workers do not work in silos. We work in conjunction with others. In this respect, there is interprofessional interaction or communication or engagement. You cannot do it alone. You bring in other professionals. Even within social work profession will have specialists. If you are not a specialist, you are not an expert in a particular aspect of social work, you refer to the available professional, relevant professional who can handle that case. So in this case, you are bringing in interdisciplinary approach into solving the problem of that particular client. We also need to understand the importance of lifelong learning. These are part of ethical standards that social work puts forward for us to recognize. The importance of lifelong learning, just like we are doing now, is part of lifelong learning. What you did not know before, we are refreshing your mind to get to know them. Through this training, there are certain things you will learn. There are certain things that will be new to you. You want to make use of them. This is part of lifelong learning. After this training, after your induction, we'll continue to attend conferences, we continue to attend workshops, we continue to attend programs so that throughout our life, we learn every day. Don't forget, education is learning, is the experience you have from cradle to grave. So that is education. So meaning that part of the ethics that is expected of any social worker, any professional social worker, is that to engage in lifelong learning and must be committed to updating his or her skills to ensure that you are relevant at all times and that you are effective. In those days, how did those people then, how did they practice? How did they profess social work profession? Now, is it on the same lane? No, things have changed. You need to know you need to have contemporary knowledge of the subject matter of the profession that we have. Social workers also understand emerging forms of technology and the ethical use of technology in social work practice. Today, we make use of our smartphone, we make use of laptop, we make use of website, we make use of different internet platforms to ensure that we gain knowledge. And today, what is in vogue is this artificial intelligence, AI. In those days, when we were in school, until you find time to go to the library. That is when you could have opportunity, you could have access to different journals, different articles, books, and so on and so forth. So when new books came out, you have to go to the library to read those books. But now you can be in your comfort zone and continue to learn and continue to do things marvelously, and you continue to gain knowledge. So how best can we update our skills? These are things that are required as social worker, and so on and so forth. You also need to make ethical decisions by applying the standard of C-ISOWN. In our Chartered Act, we have some sections that talk about code of conduct, code of ethics. What are those laws that are relevant to your practice? You need to know regulations that are relevant to professional practice. You need to know most models for ethical decision making as well. All these are required of a good social worker. How do you conduct research, and so on and so forth, as appropriate to the kind of issue you are trying to provide solution to. So again, when we talk about this, we also mean that you need to demonstrate integrity and professional conduct. As I've emphasized, you need to adhere to ethical principles, talking about confidentiality, client rights, and so on and so forth. You need to have self-reflection. You need to know when do you deserve supervision. So these are things that are attached to the competency 1, which is ethical and professional behavior. Going to two, since you have the material, the second one is about engage diversity and difference in practice. What does this mean? Social workers understand how diversity and difference characterize and shape human experience and are critical to the formation of identity. Yesterday, I talked about social worker recognizing diversity in your service users. No two individuals are the same. Everyone is unique in his or her own making. So since you know that, you need to recognize that, you need to respect that, you need to give regard to diversity that you may observe where in any setting. When you understand this, when you are practicing, you know how best you can apply the knowledge you have as appropriate in those contexts or in those settings. In this way, the dimension of diversity are understood as the intersectionality of multiple factors, including but not limited to age, like I mentioned yesterday, age, class, color, culture, disability, ability, ethnicity, gender identity, and expression, immigration status, marital status, political ideology, race, religion, spirituality, and so on, and sex, sexual orientation, and tribal sovereign status. Anything, religion, anything you want to talk about that may differentiate one person from the other. As social worker, you should be competent enough to recognize that. And you engage that experience you have, and the difference or differences you must have noticed, you engage them and you make use of them, you put them in your mind while you are while in practice. So again, I think I explained that much more better yesterday. In this case, social workers apply and communicate understanding of the importance of diversity and difference in shaping life experiences. In practice, at the micro, meso, and macro level. What's the difference? Micro, that is the lowest level. Meso is the middle level, while macro is at the upper level. Bringing this to Nigeria context, it's like you are talking about national government, you are talking about state government and the local government. That's just the the implication of these levels. So as social worker, you also present yourself as learners and engage your clients and constituencies as part of their own experiences. Your experience or your experiences cannot be my experiences. So giving me report of your own experiences means that you are an expert in that respect. Unless you tell me what your experiences are, I will not know. Unless I tell you my own experiences, you may not know. So that is what we are talking about here. Number 3, advance human rights and social, economic, and environmental justice. We talked about justice yesterday. As a social worker, do you advance right of every woman? Do you advise socio, economic, and environmental justice? Do you ensure that we have justice? Do you promote social justice in the setting where you find yourself? So everybody, regardless of position in society, has fundamental human rights, such as freedom, safety, privacy, and an adequate standard of living, healthcare, and education. Everybody has that, as even given by the Human Rights Charter. The fundamental human right of everybody should be respected. So as a social worker, you should, when you are practicing, you should ensure that you advance human rights, you advance justice, either social, economic, or environmental. So social worker is expected to understand the global interconnections of oppression and human rights violations. And you should be knowledgeable about theories of human need and social justice. There is this theory, right-based theory, which talk about the entitlement of an individual. And part of that entitlement is this human right we are talking about. This right we are talking about are part of entitlement of an individual. That is why it is right-based theory. In that theory, it means that every individual, every human being has an entitlement to get from any government, to get from any authority. So social workers understand strategy designed to eliminate oppressive structural barriers to ensure that social goods, rights, and responsibilities are distributed equitably, and that civil, political, environmental, economic, social, and cultural human rights are protected. Such should be protected very well. Advanced human rights, social, economic, and environmental justice. These are, and social workers in this regard apply their understanding of this justice to advocate for human rights at the individual and system levels. They should engage in practices that have advanced this. They should facilitate team and coalition building and other collaborative strategies for promoting system change designed to reduce social and economic inequalities. Yes, engage in practice-informed research and research-informed practice. In this case, we are using evidence-based interventions. You see, social work interventions are always evidence-based. Interventions that will affect people, interventions that we can show that this is actually what is happening in that setting. So we make use of this. I beg you, those that still have their mic unmuted, this is not good. Oh, please, can you mute your mic so that you don't disturb us? Sorry.
Anyone that is sweet at the chop.
So we engage in practice-informed research and research-informed practice. Sorry, let me quickly mute those that are giving us issues here. So, social workers understand both quantitative and qualitative research methods. When you understand this and your respective role in advancing the science of social work and evaluating their practice, we know the principles of logic, scientific inquiry, culturally informed and ethical approach to building knowledge. In this case, you engage in practice-informed research. That is, as a result, while you are practicing, there are certain problems you may identify. There are certain issues you may identify that may need intervention or that may need research, and you conduct research on those particular issues with a view to finding or to providing intervention to solving that particular problem. That is why it is we engage in practice-informed research. While you are practicing, there are these problems you have identified and you want to provide solution to it, and you conduct research, you conduct study, empirical study. So more or less a empirical study on that particular problem. Then whatever comes out as the findings of that research is you now use that to recommend intervention for that particular problem. And it is also research-informed practice because from the research, from the findings of some studies, you can now give out intervention. That is why it is research-informed practice or practice-informed research. So both ways. In this case, the social worker understand the processes for translating research findings into effective practice. You translate research findings into effective practice. Like I explained, when we have practice that is derived from multidisciplinary sources, then and multiple ways of getting knowledge, then we understand the process for translating research finding into effective practice. In this case, use practical experience and theory to inform scientific inquiry and research. Like I said, as a result of your practice experience, you now conduct a research, and so on and so forth. You can also use and translate research evidence to inform and improve practice, policy, and service delivery. Because of the evidence from the findings you have in those researches, then you make use of this to improve or to inform service delivery. The social worker can also use strategies that reduce gaps between science and social work practice, including the translation of research findings into social work practice and policy. 5, engage in policy practice. There are many policies on social welfare or on social work. In Nigeria, globally, there are frameworks, there are policies, there are different charters advancing social welfare or advancing equity, advancing social justice, advancing reducing inequality. There are so many policies, there are so many programs, there are so many agendas, there are so many commitments by the Nigerian government to all this. As a social worker, you engage how best we can apply, implement those policies, which means you have the understanding of various policies that affect social work practice. When you are aware of that, then you'll be able to practice, you'll be able to practice efficiently. In this case, social workers understand that human rights and social justice, as well as social welfare and services, are mediated by policy and its implementation at the federal, state, and local levels. How best do we implement that? So that is just the short story about engage in social and policy practice. You can read them up. Again, number 6 is engage with individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities. Of course, you already know this. We talked about it yesterday. As a social worker, you deal with individuals, you deal with the family, you deal with groups, you deal with organizations, you deal with communities. In that order. When an individual is well or his needs are met, definitely A group of individuals or those individuals in the family, the family of those individuals, they will be okay. The group they belong, organization they belong, will be fine. That one translates to a very good community development. So because we understand the theories about individuals, about families, about groups, this, the community education we do in the social work, individual, dealing with group of people, dealing with an individual, all this theory will promote the competency of any social worker. Again, social work and competency service says, as a social worker can assess individuals, family, groups, organizations, and community. You can strike a balance here. The first one is engage with individual. When you engage with individual, you are dealing with that individual. Now you want to assess individuals. You can give an assessment of individual, family, and groups as a result of the knowledge you have. This is a competence that is very, very important. You should be able to assess an individual effectively. You should be able to assess an individual correctly. You should be able to give correct analysis of an individual, correct assessment of an individual. Let me just bring it to a simple term. In school, you have what we call continuous assessment. What does that mean? It means that as you proceed in your study, as you are moving from one module to the other module, you are being assessed, you are being graded, you are being scored. Why? That scoring implies that you are making progress. That is why that assessment is being done. If you are not doing well in the assessment, if you are scoring low in the assessment, which means you must be able, you go and prepare very well for the final exam, which is going to be the evaluation of all you have done throughout the term or throughout the semester. So that is an aspect of assessment. So from that assessment, we also go to, as social worker, you intervene with individuals. You have assessed an individual. That assessment gives you a basis to intervene in his or her affairs, to intervene in the affairs of the groups, in the affairs of the community. Because of the assessment you have done, you can say much about that individual, and you know how best you can assist that individual. That is the area where you intervene. So that is why you hear about intervention in a community, intervention in a country, intervention in a state, in some states, in some local government, in some communities, to some household. I know you have heard about the conditional cash transfer or the Renew Hope program being run by the federal government. There are households that have been identified. When they identify, they assess those households, that this household will need this particular they will need this particular assistance, and as a result, they have been listed. They are documented. Those households have been listed as beneficiaries of that particular program, which is an intervention on removing or reducing poverty among the vulnerables. So because of that assessment, before they become beneficiaries, assessment must have been done on them, that these people actually deserve to be given this, to be benefiting from this particular social welfare program. So that is about intervention. Then aside that, we also talk about evaluate practice with individual. Evaluation is just like an umbrella body. When you evaluate, there are so many other things that are incorporated into evaluation. In evaluation, we have assessment within, because you can evaluate is like doing the sum total or overall assessment of all the interventions of everybody that is involved, everything that is involved in that particular intervention. You want to evaluate. Social workers possess that particular knowledge. It is when you can demonstrate that you have that skill, that you have that ability, then one can say you are competent. With that competency, you can discharge your responsibility effectively, and people will see you demonstrating that while practicing. So that is about evaluation. Then I don't know who want to go to some other subheading, because we have short period for this particular diet. That is why that is why I need to move faster on some areas, so that we will not leave anyone in doubt as per the program. Permit me to switch to another device in just within 2 minutes. I will do that, so that that will not create a problem while doing this. So just give me 2 minutes, 2 minutes break to switch between one device to the other. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. So you're not recording the program. I came in a bit late from church, and I don't know if I will listen to it later, sir.
We are still on. The class is still on.